When I was 8 years old, my grandfather, Grandpa Murphy, Cyril Murphy, that name is really Irish too, because his father came from Ireland during the potato famine, which is a boring story and it's a long story, and I won't tell you about it. But his father came over to Ireland during the potato famine. But Grandpa Murphy told me about infinity. And he asked me when I'm 8, do you know what infinity is, Danny? And I said, no, Grandpa, I'm not really sure what that is. And he said, well, you can always add one number to any number forever. You can always add another number. And well, that made sense to me. But he said, I want to explain it another way. Because he had just purchased for me for Christmas, because he and I were really, really into astronomy. He bought me a beautiful, beautiful telescope. It was kind of expensive. My dad was kind of worried that his dad had spent too much on the telescope for me, but it was really, really nice. But anyway, he said, let's take the telescope out and I want to show you something. So we took it out. This is Christmas when I was 8 years old, so whatever year it would have been, let's see, it would have been like 1956. And we went out on the patio in Chicago. It happened to be a clear night too, so that was nice. And we were looking at the stars and we were checking out the telescope for the first time. And he said, infinity means this. And this is a question that Grandpa had that he'd been thinking about most of his life. If you take 100 rocket ships, he told me, all over the earth, and if you send those rockets and take off at the same time, and you have a propulsion system that somehow, there was no talk of that you could do that now somehow, but they would go on forever. They would never stop. They would travel and travel and travel. What would the end look like? What would the end, not of the universe, but of space itself? What would it look like? He said, Danny, would there be a wall? I said, well, Grandpa, yeah, there'd probably be a wall. He said, well, if there's a wall, because I thought that too, he told me, what's on the outside of the wall? And I said, more space. He said, exactly. That's what he thought. Well, if there's more space, then what do you run into next? Another wall? And he said, it has to end, but it can't, but it must, but it can't, but it must, but it can't. He said it just like that. And I thought about it all night long. He said, well, Danny, let's get some sleep. Thanks, Grandpa. I went in my room. I'm 8 years old now. And I laid awake until at least 4 o'clock in the morning, thinking about that. So for 65 years, I'm 73 now. I've been thinking about this puzzle. So if you have any idea about what do you think it can't end. Now, in other words, logically, it can't end, but it must. And the fact that it can't end is the reason that it sort of put in my mind that all of this was created by something obviously more powerful than me and more powerful than humans. Because it has to end, but it can't, but it must, but it can't, but it must. Doesn't make any sense. And I had pondered that for 65 lonely years. If you have an answer, please tell me. Try to contact me. Because I've talked to astronomers. I'm a retired television news reporter. And I've talked to astronomers, people I've interviewed, and they always say something like, that's interesting. What an interesting question. I'll get back to you. And you know they never do. So, I hope I haven't ruined your day. But think about it tonight anyway. And get back to me.